Welcome, everyone. Oh my goodness, this is such a joy to be here with my dear friend Sabrina because we have something absolutely amazing for you. I'm gonna tease you a little bit. We're gonna talk about the absolute magic of Yoni, and Sabrina is the best person to talk about it, and you'll find out why in the moment. But first thing first, if this is your first time here, and I'm a new face for you, and Sabrina is a new face for you, my name is Magda K. I'm an intimacy coach, relationship expert, and a tantra teacher. And I'm bringing here this amazing woman who I'm like, oh my goodness, like I want to reveal everything, but we're gonna build it up for you guys. But Sabrina is someone I met quite many years ago in Thailand. I was visiting Chiang Mai, and my really good friend told me, oh, you have to go to that event, which was Yoni monologue event that had this huge installation of a yoni with a disco ball as a clitoris. And I have the photos where I am inside of this vagina, and Sabrina was the one taking those photos for me. And my friend was like, you have to go to this event and you have to meet this woman. She's amazing. I did go to the event. I did meet this woman. A few years later, here we are together, and I absolutely love what she's doing. So she's basically turning yonis, aka women's pussies, women's vaginas, into pieces of art. And we'll speak about this. But the reason why she's here is because we really want to show a different approach to female genitals. So, you know, as a woman, you're probably not very deeply connected to your yoni, to your pussy. And the intention for this conversation that we so deeply invite you to is to show you how beautiful she is. And you may not feel it right now. I've been there. I'm sure Sabrina has been there as well. That's our intention. So Sabrina, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to share more about this. But yes, as Magda was saying, my name is Sabrina and I am from Canada, but we met in Thailand. And yeah, I don't want to give away too much just yet, but I'm an artist and I have lots to share with you about yonis and yoni portraits and the magic of the yoni, all these goodies.
Yeah. Oh, so by the way, Sabrina was a guest in my program for Women Venus Codes, where we talked about the yoni and the power of transfiguration, which will also explain what it is. And I love that so much. And I decided that I want to have her back and speak about it and show it to the public, because one of the things that I'm sure every single woman feels on this planet is the incredible suppression of our sexuality. And some of us are aware of what's happening out there, and some of us are not, but we all feel the consequences. And what, especially, I will let Sabrina talk about it, the pussy, which we use the word yoni. Yoni is like a yogic tantric name for pussy, which she will explain the magic of this word and why you may see tantrikas use it so much. But it's such a sacred place. If you think of it, this is the origins of life. Every human being, you know, goes through this portal. It's a portal into life, you know, and yet we live in a society that shames female genitals in so many ways, you know, and then we wonder why women feel disconnected from themselves, why we cannot tap into our intuition, why we feel disempowered, why we get codependent, and why we struggle to orgasm. All of it is connected to the fact that the society has been for generations destroying the connection to our sex center, to our pussy, to our yoni. So I want to speak about this a little bit because, like I said, some of you may be really aware of this. And for some of you, this may be like a new thing to even hear that what? Like it comes from the external. So I'll start by saying that biologically and physiologically, there is not a single reason why our genitals should be covered. The way that your body is created by nature is perfect. The yoni has its own mechanism to keep itself clean. The lips of the yoni can seal so nothing goes inside. And ideally, you do not want to interfere. She knows how to cleanse herself and clean herself. She is fine, right? And she needs the air to breathe. So we live in times that keep telling us genitals need to be covered. Now, as a consequence of covering the genitals, and especially because a lot of underwear is made of like plastic materials and unnatural materials that actually trap the moist, and that creates infections in the yoni. Okay, so then you smell bad, right? How many times have we heard that our genitals smell bad, right? Then they sell us all of those special soaps and everything else so that it smells good. Not to mention that a lot of these liquids for intimate hygiene, that they actually throw your pussy off natural balance. So it's like the society is creating the problem and then it's giving you the solution for the problem that it kind of created. Now notice, by the way, that all of those intimate soaps, they're only sold to women. I haven't really seen advertisement for any products for men telling you, hey, your genitals maybe don't smell bad and you should use special soaps and perfumes so that your woman wants to be intimate with you. But goodness, we hear this so much. So our genitals smell bad. And it's also our genitals that should be shaved, right? It's like these days, if a woman is not shaved, then most of the time it's meant to be fully shaved now. It's like, it's literally like women are made fun of if they have pubic hair, which is ridiculous because that's actually a sign, a physical sign of being sexually mature, right? When a woman has her period and when she becomes open and healthy and ready to be sexual, one of the changes that happen in her body is pubic hair. And pubic hair is also what keeps her genitals clean. It's one of the natural protections from STDs that we're told women, we need to shave. Not to mention all of the shaming around how the yoni looks and the lips. You know, it's like we see in porn, we see a very specific shape of a pussy with small lips. While if you look at the percentage, there are different types of yonis. And Sabrina, like working with those beautiful creations, like you've seen so many, and majority of women do have bigger lips that come out of the body, but it's not what we see in porn, right? So it's not what's sexualized. So I don't know if you guys know this, but one of the most common plastic surgeries is cutting the lips because they're too big, you know, in the minds of many women, which is just absolutely horrible. And Sabrina, I don't know if you want to add anything because you've worked with women, you know, women have come to you, you know, and we'll speak about it to make these Yoni portraits, to guide them through this process of like healing the relationship with the Yoni. Like, have you seen a lot of this, a lot of the consequences of this suppression and shaming of the genitals?
Yeah, I mean, this I often see at the beginning of the process. So often when I connect with women or women connect with me and they ask to do or participate in the Yoni portraits, I more than often have experiences where they don't totally commit until 2 months, let's say, sometimes 2 months, sometimes 3 months after they've reached out to me. And of course, I always hold space for that. And it's never something that I personally feel needs to be rushed because I understand that the reason for the hesitation a lot of the time, so the reason for the delays is because of this shame around the yoni. And it's because of this disconnection. Some people or some women, they, you know, there's definitely some sort of fire in their heart that brought them to me, that brought them to this point where like, okay, I acknowledge the fact that I've not connected, but even to like pursue that thought into more of like a real experience, it still feels a bit foreign. It still feels uncomfortable. It's like, ugh, like, okay, am I doing this? Yeah, okay, I'm doing this because it's such a foreign thing to us now, to like even just look at the yoni or like anything to do with it, right? I even talked to some of like my family members and things about this because they know what I'm doing, and even like when I go to talk about it, like some people are like, just I don't think we should talk about this because it's an uncomfortable thing. Or like for some people, I remember when I started reading the pussy, like a reclamation, reclamation, yes, by Mama Gina. Sometimes I'd have my book with me and like people would just be like, really awkward out with even just looking at the word pussy. Like my mother won't say the word pussy. She's like, oh, like, are you reading that book? Like the P word book? I'm like, yes, mom. But like, it's just to show you though, like this is a very common thing amongst all women, in either a large scale when it comes to the portraits, or even just a small scale, like just to even utter the word vagina, yoni, pussy. There's a lot of shame that definitely stands behind it.
Yeah, and by the way, with the book, if you guys haven't read it, it is an amazing book. I was reading at the time that one, and it has like the cover is like this huge word pussy, and then I was also reading. Oh, there you go. And then I was also reading another book called Ethical Slut, and I was actually flying, and I had my layover in Dubai, and I was looking for something in my bag, and so I took both of these books out and I placed them on the floor while getting something from my bag. And, because it's our daily reality, we talk about it, that's been my work for like 10 years. So I sometimes forget how uncomfortable this can get. And so I'm doing something and these two books are next to me. And yeah, there's this young man who sat next to me, and then he looks at these books and he was just terrified. But I think it's a funny story, but at the same time, it's so sad, because if that was a book that said a shoulder, a reclamation, no one would make a deal out of it, right? So there's definitely, and it is a sacred place which should be treated differently, but it just shows us how uncomfortable we are around this. And one of the things, when you talked about most women not even looking at the yoni, and that's true, to actually look at her, if you ever want to look at your own pussy, what you need to do is sit with your legs open. And that act of opening your legs, you're going to see, is going to trigger so much. Because even there's a phrase, spread your legs, which basically means you're easy, you're a slut. So that movement, that physical movement of opening your legs so you can look at yourself, it's going to bring so much, right? Because we're not allowed to open our legs. Like, notice what's been the good manners taught to women for generations. Like when you sit, legs together or leg over a leg, right? So that this is tightly closed. So that conditioning, like I always say this, that the suppression of sexuality, the reason why it's been so effective, it's because it's been done in subtle ways. Again, the way women sit. Why don't you think that men sit leg over leg, but women do? For a man, it's perfectly okay to sit with his legs quite open, right? So that he can literally own the room with his sexual energy. It's not okay for women. We are meant to close our sex center. And, I always say that if this is our relationship, and like you said, right, there is the longing in a woman to look at her sex center and connect deeper, because it's an instinct. That's for us, this is the beginning point of all of everything. And even if a woman is disconnected from it, on a deep level in the heart, we know that that's where everything starts. So we know we want to be connected. But like I said, it can take even a few months before a woman is actually ready to do something about this. So if you think of this, like if you look at all of these different elements, it's like, how can we be surprised, right? That women feel, like I mentioned, disempowered, not connected to our intuition, and inorgasmic. Like if this is, it's if you think of a river, right? This amazing, beautiful river, I don't know, Nile or like whatever, any amazing big rivers, beautiful rivers that flow through our planet. And imagine that someone cut that river from the source, wherever it is in the mountain that the water originates, and it was cut from the source. The river would dry. And that's where most women are. We are disconnected from the very source of our juiciness, our aliveness, our pleasure, our life force. And then we wonder why women struggle to be in their feminine energy, and why women are not radiant, and why women live too much from the masculine, because we're disconnected from the source. So something I really want Sabrina to share with you is the magic of Yoni herself. So she has these beautiful stories. And like we said, the vocabulary is important. In English, we have vagina, vulva, pussy, candor, all these different words that, by the way, some of them mean something a little different. But there is not a single word that actually feels really good. Words like pussy and cunt have been taken and used as offensive. These are swear words. It's not easy to say them. In my language, I'm Polish. There's literally like one word, which is, again, became a swear word, and it doesn't feel good because like, why would it even be used? And any other name, it's like anatomical. It's just weird. There's literally no word to describe our genitals, which is exactly the point. If you want something to disappear from life, do not give it a name. If you cannot speak about it because there's no vocabulary, it won't be in our space, so it will disappear. That's a great way to kill something, to kill an idea. So this is why people have taken the word from Tantra, from Sanskrit, yoni, and have used this. But there's a reason why this word is this word, and the whole meaning behind it. So Sabrina, can you tell us more about that and all the amazing stories of the yoni?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of that and inviting me into this space. So I guess in the beginning of my artistic journey, I started as a way to cope with anxiety because I used to get really bad anxiety. And then gradually it kind of developed into something more where I try to channel different energies or different like connections with myself, with people, the environment, things in external and internal as well. And I try to create images in this way. But more recently, I started to create Yoni portraits, and it actually started when I was drawing. Well, I still draw, but when I was drawing other images before, I often loved drawing women, like nude women, because I love the curves of the female body, and just like the yoni, like the feminine body is so diverse, and there's just so many different aspects of beauty that you can see in every woman. And I think by drawing the body, you can really experience this on a different level. So I would often use images of like women, like from stock images online. If I had a vision, I would try to match that with like the image that I'm seeking, and then I would use that as like a reference so I could draw what I wanted to draw. But it got to a point where I got stuck. So I was trying to look for a very specific image or a very specific like kind of not movement, but just like position that the woman was assuming for that particular image, because I had a very clear vision in mind and I couldn't find it. So I ended up just using nude photos of myself. And from that, drawing nude photos of myself, becoming more comfortable with myself and like just this experience, this artistic experience, I then one day decided, like, I haven't drawn my yoni. What happens if I draw my yoni? So of course, as Magda was describing, it was one of those moments where I was also invited to contemplate my yoni. And of course, I sat there, legs spread, and I was just with a mirror in my hand and I was looking at my yoni and I'm like, oh, okay, she's quite interesting, and just contemplating it. And it was, for me, it wasn't it wasn't so much this negative or positive like experience that I was having. It felt very neutral, but it came with this level of curiosity, because I realized that, oh my gosh, I've never actually really sat there and looked at my yoni or contemplated my yoni, or, you know, I know it's there, but oh my gosh, why haven't I looked at it in this way? So of course, from that point, I just started drawing them. And then when I started drawing or painting the yonis and sharing them on my social media, a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, had asked to purchase this drawing, and you know, the rest became history. So from that, like, she couldn't actually purchase it because I was using it for a much larger painting that a larger vision I had in mind, but I did offer to do a portrait of hers. And then, yeah, then the rest
That's
was
how it
started.
started.
Yeah, that's how it started.
Yeah, I absolutely love this whole idea.
Mhm.
Like, you know, when we had this conversation last time, look how often, I mean, okay, not that often, but it's a normal thing to get a portrait of your face. And, you know, if we think back in times, it was very like it was like a status symbol that you needed to have your own portrait. Like when we talk about, you know, periods of kings, right? You have your own portrait in the house. And still today, you know, very successful people would often keep their own portrait in their office. So I was like, well, what if we lived in a society that actually honored the feminine, right? Because having your own portrait, by the way, this is either someone in power or a man, like positions of power, of a masculine power in a way, that's what's worthy of a painting. But what if we lived in a society that truly honored life and the ability to give life, the creation of life, right? Like if we really actually honor the feminine, we will be freaking bowing to the yoni and praying to her, right? So imagine, and I know it's gonna feel outrageous, but just imagine that if there was a CEO of a company and instead of his own portrait, he had a portrait of a yoni that birthed him. Like if he was so appreciative of the gift of life, of the fact that this woman offered her body and her soul to be a portal through which he came to this life. And then imagine for especially for couples, right? One of the things we do in tantra, it's we add rituals to sexuality. So it's always recommended to create an altar in your bedroom to add those elements to help you connect to something bigger than just the physical act, right? So imagine having this portrait of woman's yoni on this altar, or have it hanging above the bed. Because, you know, again, it's you know, these are all the little things, like I said before, that we may not even be aware of. But notice how sex, the way we speak about sex and the way we present it in Hollywood movies and everything, and of course in porn, it's all centered on the penis, right? When does sex end? When he comes. It's all about the cock. But imagine if we turn it around, if it was all about the yoni. So if she was portrayed somewhere in the bedroom, like, I don't know, it just like the whole idea gives me shivers because it feels so amazing in my body to just imagine that. So that, like, I love this whole concept of yoni portraits that Sabrina is doing, because it's a way to bring back the respect that the yoni deserves. Yeah. And I mean, it must have felt amazing for you, like, you know, having witnessed so many yonis, and like, because you don't take it lightly, right? It's like, it's, I don't like saying these things, but like it's really being of service, like a spiritual act of holding those yonis for women and transfiguring it with them.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely a, for lack of a better word, very profound experience, really. Like, if especially when you perceive it from the perspective of that you just shared with us, right? Like just this point of creation. And I actually really appreciate you mentioning, or like trying to kind of give us that visualization, because that's exactly how it was, or not exactly, but that power, that that kind of magnitude, or like the importance around the yoni was definitely more present in ancient civilization even, which I can kind of go into sharing. So as you previously asked, or like you were talking about, like, what is yoni? Why do we use the word yoni and not pussy and not vagina and all these things? So yoni, for those of you who don't know, is a Sanskrit word, and it is another word that can be attributed to the womb, to the pussy, to the vagina, but also the source. And that's the most important thing. Like, yoni is the source. It's the matrix of generations. It's the primal source of all beings. It's the origin of the universe. And so this is why I choose to use the word yoni, because it is reflective of all of those things. There is a power behind it. One that I feel like to this day hasn't been quite as disrupted as pussy or vagina, right? As you were saying, pussy or even cunt is used as like a very derogatory word, or like something that it has a negative connotation around it. And then vagina is more of like the function, the anatomical word that we use. And of course, it's more than that. Like, to me, the yoni is very much the void, just totally, and like the void. It is existence, it is consciousness, it is a portal to the divine. And in ancient civilization, there are a few instances where this has been kind of illustrated or demonstrated amongst goddesses. Okay, and so like if you think like, okay, there's goddesses and like the yoni, and you know, how powerful is the yoni? Well, I can share with you now. So there's a few stories that I can share, and then just give you little examples. So starting with a very well-known story in Greek mythology with Dimitri and Persephone. So Dimitri, she is the goddess of harvest, of fertility, of this like life, just life, like all these things on earth, okay? And Persephone is her daughter. And according to, I guess, as you know, ancient like stories or mythology or things like this, there's always different versions of the story, but with the version that I'm going with. So Persephone was raped and abducted by Hades, which is the god of the underworld. So naturally, Dimitri is very upset by this. And so you think, okay, the goddess of like harvest, the goddess of fertility, you know, very upset and like mourning the loss of her daughter, like very devastated. At that point, she relinquishes her responsibilities within that community or within that society or the, you know, the people. And when she does that, then the life kind of diminishes, right? Now it becomes a very lifeless earth or lifeless place. So Dimitri, she, in her mourning and in her quest to find her daughter, she comes to the city of Elysius. And in the city of Elysius, she comes across a servant, so a servant from the house of Calesus, which is the king of Elysius. And this they sound very similar, so I mean, don't get wrapped around the name so much, but Dimitri comes across a servant, and her name is Balbo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Balbo is she's also another goddess. And basically she offers Dimitri some wine and food because she sees a very upset woman, and she's like, oh, how can I help you? Is there anything I can do for you? You know, trying to like help her, like empathize with her, like, you know, support her, like we should all do with all our sisters. Yeah. So she offers her food, and Dimitri's like, no, I don't want this. I don't feel good. Like, you know, I've lost my daughter and I'm mourning her loss. I'm devastated, all these things. Yeah. So very sad goddess. And then this servant, this mysterious servant, Balbo, you know, contemplating this woman and like, oh, she's very upset. Like, how can I help her? And out of nowhere, she lifts her skirt and she flashes her yoni. And Dimitri is there like, what? and just so like confused, but then delighted by this, like this wow, this yoni, this like, oh, this image, this experience, everything. So in that moment, the yoni totally exudes its power to this morning goddess, enough so that the morning goddess is sprung back into her responsibility, sprung back into life, and is determined to demand Zeus return her daughter from Hades. Okay, so that's one story that illustrates this power of the yoni. And then another one is an ancient, like Shinto story with Amaterasu and Ame no Uzam. Okay, so I hope I'm pronouncing these properly.
None of us is Japanese, but
yes, I'm doing my best. So Amate Rusu is the sun goddess, and Ame no Uzam is the goddess of dawn. Okay, and the sun goddess, you know, doing her beautiful sun solar, you know, responsibilities and things like this, she has a brother, and her brother's name is Susano, and Susano is the god of like the storm god. And in short, Susano rapes, he abuses, he really like hurts his sister. And according to the story that I followed here, he strikes her vulva with a spindle shaft. So if you can imagine that for a second, that is horrific. That's almost barbaric. That is quite literally striking the source in a very, very like hostile, very aggressive, very negative way. So of course, Amaterasu is very upset. She's very devastated. She's traumatized, right? And this is also something reflected in society today. This sort of thing happens, right? So of course, she closes up and she hides in a heavenly cave. So now you have the sun goddess, the goddess who brings light, that brings love, that brings life to the world. She is hiding in a cave because her brother violated something that's so valuable, so precious to her, right? The yoni. So she's in the cave, and you know, everything is now dark. There's darkness that is brought onto the world. And here we have Ame no Uzam is the other goddess, and she comes around. And she's basically trying to lure out the sun goddess because, you know, she knows, okay, we need the sun. Please come out. Please come out. And the sun goddess is like, no, I won't have it. I will stay in my cave. And so Ame no Uzam brings about her other deity friends. Okay, so there's now more goddesses. So a group of goddesses all come into a circle around the cave, and they're trying to find ways to lure out the sun goddess. And out of nowhere, I guess Ame no Uzam decides to start like a dance. And I feel like this is more like a ritualistic kind of dance. Like, okay, now let's stir up the energy here. Let's try to bring the sun goddess. Let's try to inspire her. Let's call on everyone, bring them here. So she starts dancing and she's stomping around, and she has like her bamboo sticks, and just, you know, really connecting with like her very like natural, very wild, raw, like kind of power. Like she's quite literally stepping into her power, and she's just moving about and trying to like bring all the sisters with her. And she gets so into it to a point where she starts taking off her clothes, and then of course she flashes the yoni. And in this moment, Amaterasu, you know, starts to have a spark of curiosity, okay, as we all should around the yoni. And then she like peeps out of her little cave, like, what's going on, what's happening? And then through that excitement, it was enough to lure the sun goddess out of the cave. So again, this is another experience where you see, or not a story, sorry, that you see where the yoni is that powerful that it can alter, it can persuade, it can influence, it can really guide a goddess out of her suffering. Okay, so if we're talking about a goddess, you know, and we are goddesses, like just imagine like that kind of power that we can all share, that we can all experience. And then a few other examples. So I have another book here. which I think is a brilliant book. And I don't know if the book cover can be shown or if it's like reversed because of the camera, but in any case, it's called the Yoni, so the sacred symbol of the female creative power, by Rufus Camphausen. And it's a brilliant book as well. And he speaks about a lot of like ancient civilizations that involve the yoni, and some of which is that I pulled from the book is around the menstrual cycle. So as Magda was talking about, like in Western society today, you know, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of negativity around the yoni, including the other powers or the other aspects around the yoni, so menstruating being one of them. So often when you hear of like menstruation, it's always like, oh, like this again, like, oh, now I can't do anything, oh, now I'm like hindered from all my other activities. And you know, it's painful. And I even remember for myself when I was in university and even in high school, it was always like, you know, such a big like thing, but not in a good way. It was very like, oh, like I don't want my period, like, oh, like I'll do everything to get rid of it. And this is where I think sometimes like birth control comes into mind for some women. You know, we have so many things out there to suppress this natural cyclic process, and not enough that embraces it, that celebrates it, right? So this idea of celebrating and worshiping it did exist in ancient civilization. So in the Inca civilization, so Inca being like in Peru, actually where my mother's from, there's the moon goddess. Her name is Mama, yeah, Mama Killa, and she was worshipped as the ruler of the menstrual cycle. And then in ancient Persia, there's the goddess Jaki, who was thought to be like responsible for the menstrual cycle as well. And then one of my favorites in Egypt, the people would wear like a red amulet around their neck. And this red would represent like the blood from the goddess Isis. Okay, so these again are other examples of which like, you know, the yoni in some capacity is being worshipped around the people, worshipped in civilization, which is quite the polar opposite than it is today, which is, you know, what we are trying to do. What, you know, more people, more women now are really trying to do, and men as well, like acknowledging that power, acknowledging the whole yoni, right? Everything about her in every capacity. And then the last thing that I can share just before I pass it back to Magda is how the yoni is also seen in nature. So maybe some of you are familiar, maybe some of you aren't, but so sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is something that you see a lot. Actually, I see it a lot more now these days, and a whole bunch of things, right? Even something as small as like your jewelry and your t-shirts and whatever else. But as a whole, sacred geometry is like spiritual shapes and patterns that contain symbols. Okay, and symbols are quite important, especially in ancient civilizations. Symbols were very great deals. Like you could see it a lot in like Egypt as well. Symbolism is like a huge thing. So within sacred geometry, you can often observe it in nature, yeah, and that's how some of these geometric shapes or patterns kind of came about, one of which being the flower of life, which again in like very yoga communities is a very common thing. Probably now even in non-yoga communities, it's a very well-known thing. But the flower of life is representing creation and unity. And within the flower of life, there's these symbols, and one of the first of which is the circle itself. So the flower of life starts with a circle, and the circle symbolizes existence or consciousness. It also symbolizes like infinite cycle. There's no beginning, there's no end, there's no birth, there's no death. That is consciousness, right? It's timeless, it's infinite, it's boundless. And then within the circle, there's a series of these little like kind of oval-like shapes, which is the Visca Pisces, or the vessel of the fish. And this is the ancient symbol of the yoni. So as a whole, it's representing, the flower of life is representing quite literally the feminine creative force, or the mother spirit that birthed the world and the gods. And that to me, I think, is very powerful, just in a symbol. You know, like I don't even have words to describe, like non-cliche words to describe. Just like if for a second you really just perceive that and you try to understand it, it's amazing. Like it actually almost makes me want to cry because I just think it's so profound.
And I'm going to drop a little note here for all of the people who are Christian. One of the first symbols of Christianity was fish. For people who do the studies of the feminine, if you go back to the origins of Christianity, there's way, way more space for the feminine. That's been the human doing to eliminate the feminine energy from Christianity. But in original form, there was lots and lots of space for this energy as well. And I love it. Like I feel like my voice is trembling a little bit now because like if you really grasp what Yoni truly is, and then you look at the life we live in and how she is treated. Like when I mentioned before, right, that women cut their lips because the lips are not as small as they see in porn. How can you grasp the idea even that something as perfect and whole and magical as the portal of the whole creation, of the whole universe, like would you go and cut it in any way? You would bow down in love, in humbleness, like just to worship that, because we all exist because of this. No one would ever dare to say that she smells or she needs to be changed or she needs to be cut. And no one ever would abuse her. No one ever would force anything inside of her. And for me, the fact that such a thing as rape exists, it shows just how far we are from understanding the true power of Yoni. And that is on both men and women, because as women, notice also how many times have we allowed to have sex when we didn't want to, right? We allowed some form of abuse towards our Yoni. So when like you're saying, like, you know, speaking of this, it's amazing looking at the flower of life, which is like the primary shape. It's such a powerful shape. You see it in nature, and like you were saying, these days it's becoming more and more popular to see, like you see it everywhere, really, because it's such a powerful symbol. And it includes the Yoni. Like there are like multiple Yonis in a way in it, looking at you. And then you see what we do, how we treat her. Like, you know, when you talk about the cycle, that this is another powerful thing. We spoke about it just before getting on this call. I was in a pill for 10 years. Why? Because sometimes more often than not, bleeding was like, oh, damn it, I don't want it. And notice the message that we are sending our body when we do this. Our cycle is inconvenient. The Yoni, the way she functions, is inconvenient. Being a woman is inconvenient. Like imagine again, like if you look at these, like what you were sharing, those stories of goddesses and creation of life, the whole life. Imagine looking at the feminine principle that created the whole universe, look at her and tell her, well, you're inconvenient. Like how could we? You know, and this is why I love the whole idea of Yoni portraits that you're doing so much. And I feel like I feel that we have the power to change this. And another book I also wanted to recommend is called Vagina. It's a big book, but it just shows so much magic about it. But one thing I really found interesting, and it makes so much sense. So one of the things she was explaining was, why is it that during the wars, men are killed, but women are raped? it's not very common to go into villages and kill the women. You would rape the women. And what she's claiming in the book, that is actually, or at least it used to be, an order, that soldiers were being told to do that. And the story that you told, you mentioned the Japanese story, right? The sun goddess, she was devastated, she was broken. Why? Because she got raped. Her yoni got raped, was disrespected. And this is how you kill a woman, not through shooting her or stabbing her, but by disrespecting the yoni. And this happens. And anytime you're with a lover and they don't take time to tune into yoni to make sure that she wants this interaction, that she's ready for the penetration, that happens. So every woman has the memory of that, whether it's more intense or less intense, we have that memory. And what these stories say also is that the remedy for a broken woman whose yoni got broken is a yoni, right? That there's no other way to break a woman as through breaking her yoni, and it's the yoni that can bring her back. And that's what I love about it. And I also like to add my own element to this. It's just like, let's not take yoni so seriously, because here we have all of these stories of these women, you know, being very happy, and it didn't matter how old or how skinny or fit they were, any woman in any size of any age, right? And they're playful and they're dancing and woohoo, flashing the skirt. Because I think these days we also take it too seriously. So we've lost the element of playfulness. And yoni, if you actually tune into the energy of our genitals, it's the energy of pleasure and being playful, very childlike energy. And we also kind of lost it. So I think it's beautiful to bring this back. And something I want to offer to all of you listening to this call right now is a little practice of connecting to your yoni. And whether you've been doing this, you know, if you've been doing this practice already in some form, then this is another way of like rooting this practice deeper in your body. But this may be actually the very first time that you're connecting to your yoni. So for this practice, it's going to be very quick, because you notice that to really make profound changes in our lives, we don't need to make huge things. Sometimes a small little practice can make some magic for us. So I want to do a little thing for you, guide you through a little thing to help you connect to your yoni. And for this practice, all you need is make yourself comfortable and close your eyes. So I invite you all to close your eyes. And Sabrina, if you want to follow and go into this little practice with me. So close your eyes, everyone. Close your eyes and just allow yourself to enjoy the joy and sweetness of your breath, of taking the air in and letting it go. How beautiful it feels to be able to breathe. The relaxation that comes with every inhale and exhale, giving your body exactly what it needs, letting go of what it doesn't need any longer. Dropping into the body through the breath, feeling your physical body. And I want you to drop your awareness into your yoni. And I want you to try to recall how she looks like. So start with the outside. Can you remember all of the outside, the outer lips, the pubic bone, the hair? Can you remember the shape and the color of your inner lips? Try to recall how the head of your clitoris looks like, and the hood the little piece of skin that covers her. Can you remember if she's fully covered or not? Try to recall the entry to your vagina, how it looks like. And even go lower. And try to recall your anus. How does it look like? The skin, the folds, the color. Now place your one or both hands over your yoni. And when you do this, I want you to notice the subtle signs of her being alive. As a reaction to the touch and the warmth of your hand, she starts pulsating and reacting. She's there, she's alive. And feeling that aliveness in between your legs, I want you to smile. Have a big smile on your face, and then send the smile into your yoni. Send the smile into your yoni. Smile to your yoni. And when you're smiling, I want you to visualize the energy going from your hands into your yoni. You're sharing this beautiful, loving energy into your yoni. So visualize and feel the energy from your hands into your yoni. The energy of love, acceptance, adoration. And either quietly in your mind or out loud, just say hello. Say hello to your yoni. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. And I love your smile, because anytime I say hello to my yoni, I smile, which is exactly like the stories that you shared, right? Connecting to the yoni just puts this huge smile on our face.
Yeah, no, it's very nice. Thank you so much for guiding us through that.
And my loves, this is such a small thing, but I always say anytime we work on any part of the body, whether it's a physical body or energy body, we want to recreate a relationship, right? So think of trying to build any relationship like with another human being. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes consistent showing up, right? You can have like a great weekend away with someone, but if you're not going to check in with them ever again, you haven't built a connection. You build connection by, messaging someone, sending a little video, calling, checking in, going for coffee, right? So it's the same here. And one thing I will invite you to do is after this call, anytime you feel safe and comfortable, do what Sabrina was talking about when you went through this process. Take a mirror, look at your yoni, and notice how well could you remember her. The first part when I was guiding you through how does she look like in details. Actually go and see. Like what you were saying, right? When you were looking at your yoni first, you're like, it wasn't negative or positive, but it was like sort of curiosity, right? Yeah, I had that too. It was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And like looking, behind, moving the lips, like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. And by the way, so this mirror exercise, the yoni gazing, that's the practice of transfiguration. Can you speak a little bit about this? Because this is like an essential part of those yoni portraits that you do.
Yes. So transfiguration is usually like a method that is often observed or practiced or integrated within like tantric teachings. But it doesn't have to be exclusively for Tantra, yeah? But it involves altering your inner state to see something or someone through the eyes of the divine. So, meaning it's like, well, quite like my glasses, yeah? Like we all kind of wear these lenses with preconceived notions about, in this case, the yoni. And transfiguration is simply removing those lenses and being able to see her in truth, being able to see beyond just the physical form of the yoni, being able to almost visualize or see, perceive her energy, her essence. It's to see the goddess in the yoni itself. So transfiguration can be done by a series of different kinds of exercises. However, for the nature of like the yoni, this is why Magda guided us through a beautiful like inner journey. And this is what I aim to do with the Yoni portraits.
Yeah, and everything we really shared, what you were talking about with Yoni, it's like what Yoni actually means, this portal, source of creation, being able to really see that in your genitals, that's the process of transfiguration. Because most of us, what we see is like folds of skin, and most of us are conditioned to think that they're ugly and they smell. So being able to step out of that and remember, I love what you said, it's like taking off the glasses to see the truth. That's what it is for me. It's the seeing the truth of what yoni is. That's transfiguration. And it's something, yeah, we can practice. We can transfigure everything by removing the layers of, oh, it's ugly, it's this or that, and seeing the divine perfection. I keep saying this because I absolutely love what you do regarding your portraits, because that's really what it is. You guide women through the process of transfiguration, and then I'm missing the word right now, but you basically transfer that moment, that essence onto paper, right? So transfiguration is a state of being, and the truth is, it's not so easy to stay there continuously. So we go in, we go out. It's a bit of like, we try to, it's fluid, right? So when we see we're stepping out of it, we can do something to come back. And what you like catch on paper the moment of transfiguration, you catch the like you represent the truth of every singular yoni, because of course every yoni is different, like every woman is different. You're saying this about the physical body. There's so many expressions of female curves. So you have this beautiful drawing that represents your yoni in the state of transfiguration. It shows your yoni in her truth, not as some inconvenient, smelly folds, but as something absolutely amazing and beautiful. And I'm actually so honored, because we spoke about this, and I love what Sabrina does. And I really wanted to introduce you to this. I mean, again, I even with like when I think of myself, like my journey of falling in love with my yoni has been a journey. It started by stopping to hate her. That was the first stage. Let's stop hating her and thinking she's ugly. But it took me a while to be able to actually love her and think that she's beautiful, and actually notice that this is a flower. If you look at nature, a flower is the sex organ of many plants, right? So our yoni is our flower, and being able to really see her as the flower, as the most beautiful part of a plant, that took me some time. And I know how important it is for women to reconnect to this. And it's not so easy, because we're talking about it. We live in a society where, like, you're not really welcome to speak about what you do at like family gatherings, right? We're not it's not okay for us to have a book that says pussy, that talks about yoni. For me as well, when I stay with my parents, Jesus, the sentences that my dad uses, to describe when I menstruate, it's just disgusting. It's so immature. So it's really not easy. And this is when I believe us coming together as women, creating that space where we can offer that transmission for each other is so powerful. So I spoke to Sabrina, and we decided to offer something very, very special for you, my ladies. Or if we have any men listening, this is like a beautiful gift for your woman as well. So Sabrina will speak a bit more about this because this is her zone of genius. But what a Yoni portrait is literally a portrait of your Yoni. And it's a very individual and personal process because, like we both said, every Yoni is different. So one aspect is this divine element of every Yoni plus the uniqueness of the Yoni. And then Sabrina, I'll pass to you in a moment so you can explain this process a bit more. So, because there's a few steps to this, like I said, she guides you through transfiguration. It's not just the drawing. It's an actual experience, you know. It's way more than, like, you know, going to IKEA and buying a painting. That's not what this is about. This is like a deep, profound experience for both you and Sabrina, actually, when she goes through this. And so we're discussing this, and we have a very special offering for you, my ladies, where you can get this painting, when you can experience the Sabrina's magic of transfiguring your Yoni into a stunning portrait. And I'm also sharing from my side 1 hour of a live call where I guide you through practices of connecting to your Yoni. So this is where we work together for you to really feel her, to connect to her. And you know, today I took you through a tiny experience, because that is something you can take with yourself. You know, closing your eyes, placing your hands over your Yoni, feeling that she's alive, smiling to her and saying hello. That can take 30 seconds. That's something you can take and do every morning. You don't need me or Sabrina for this. But if you want to go deeper, then both of us are putting our magic into this very unique container to offer this to you. So Sabrina, can you speak more about the process of the Yoni portrait? And then also there are actually 3 versions of what you can do depending on the size and the quality. So if you can speak a little bit about this.
Yes, thank you. So the process, like Magda said, first off, it's not like you're buying a painting from IKEA, you're buying a painting from a shop because you're like, oh, it looks beautiful and whatever. I mean, that's of course nice. I love all art. But the way that I've kind of made this, the way that I feel it should be, because it is the Yoni, as we've stated for the last, I don't know what hour or so. You know, it's a very powerful, very profound aspect that we're working with, right? Aspect of the divine. So I think of it more of an exploration. It is an exploration of which I am just there to really hold space for. But the women themselves, you're the ones that you're putting in that effort, and you're the ones that are setting that intention. You're the ones that have that vision. I am simply like a vessel that is channeling what it is that you're putting out there, right? And what it is that you're connected to. And I express that through the art. So typically the process kind of looks like this. Yeah. So it is an exploration that is initially guided by a short meditation with me. And in this point, we use the opportunity to kind of set that impulse to your heart and to integrate your intention into the whole like portrait and also into the photos. So of course, the women will need to submit photos to me. But I always say that it's very important that prior to doing this, that we align ourselves, center ourselves into the space that we want for this whole portrait, because one of the biggest things that you're offering, in addition to those photos and your Yoni, is also the energy that goes along with it, because that energy becomes the foundation of which I work off of in order to create the portraits. Okay, and then once this energetic union becomes the foundation, then the painting begins. And in this part, this is where it becomes more of like an independent thing for me. So the way it looks is that we connect at the beginning, then we separate, and I do the painting. I give updates to the women as I do the painting. If there's any kind of insight that I wish to share with them, or vice versa, and then that's also like, I make space for that as well, of course. Any questions or concern, I make space for that, of course. And the overall process is meant to be very fluid, right? The yoni being like the yoni, and also connected to the sacral chakra or svanastana, like this is the water, this is the flow, this is something that organically just comes into fruition. At no point should this ever be a rushed or forced process. Okay, this to me feels like a way to honor the yoni and to honor the women that are participating as well. This is very important. The paintings usually take an average to 6 to 8 hours. However, it could be much longer. It really depends on the level of detail, which is something that the women can select based on the prices or the different tier levels, which I will explain just in a moment. But after the painting is completed, this is when like the bigger part of the transfiguration comes into play. So then again, I will initiate another kind of meditation. And this is when the contemplation, the transfiguration happens. This is when everything kind of comes together and you start to perceive that interconnectedness with the painting, with yourself, with me, with the yoni, the divine. All of these aspects kind of just fall into place. And it's quite beautiful because this is the moment that not only does it surprise the women to see the portraits, but it also surprises me. And something that I don't think not everyone totally knows about me or just any artist is that when you are attuning yourself to something greater than yourself, especially in art, right? I never like to say that that it's my creativity, right? I am in partnership with that creativity, but I don't always have control of that creativity, because creativity quite literally is described as being part of the source, directly to like connecting to the source, but being expressed in a very different way. And in this case, a visual way through the painting, yes? So that means that at the end, I'm often quite surprised because I don't really know what it's going to look like from the beginning to the end. I just do. I'm just there. I just hold space for it. So this again is why it's important that that energy, that initial energy, intention that the women set and integrate into the photos, integrate into the portraits, that is the foundation, because that's what you see more towards the end. And I've often had experiences where the end portrait, it's beautiful, it's always beautiful, and I'm always amazed, I'm like, wow. But sometimes I don't even totally understand the symbolism in it until I actually connect with the women, and then they express to me what was going through them, or what was moving through them in the time that I was doing the portrait, what is moving through them in that present moment, and then it makes sense, and then it clicks, and I'm like, okay, that is the magic that for me, it's really, even in this moment, it's quite unexplainable. Like I can't really explain too much of it because I don't know how to, but it's one of those things that it's definitely, I feel personally, it needs to be experienced. And that's the whole part of the magic. That's the whole part of the divine. So it is a gift to both you and myself, no doubt about it. So that's kind of the process there. And then, as I was mentioning before, there is a pricing.
If I may speak, just so
Yes.
right, so basically what we want to offer is to each one of you is this experience of what Sabrina just explained. It's a whole beautiful process, you know, and you can tune into Sabrina's energy. She's very caring and very loving and nurturing. So she's holding you through all of this. Like you know, the word hold, it's like really overused these days, but you really feel held, you know, throughout this whole process, no matter how long it will take. She is there energetically holding you. You feel very safe. And again, I'm gonna add my part of this 1 hour session. So that is offered to everyone, but then depending on and you'll speak about it, the size and the materials that Sabrina will use for the portrait, we have 3 different price tiers, and I'll speak about the price in a moment. But everyone is experiencing this. It's just later how fancy paper you want to use, you know, so this is all up to you. These are details that I don't even know much about.
Yeah, so just to extend on that a bit, so I have different tier levels. So tier 1, simply it's 4 by 4, so 4 inches by 4 inches paper, And so it's not quite big, but it's a nice good size. And the paper that I'm using, for those of you who are familiar, I use predominantly watercolor paints. And the paper that I'm using here is Fluid, and Fluid's a beautiful paper. And then the second tier, I'm also using Fluid, but this time it's an 8x8 measurement. So it's a little bit bigger. And then for the last tier, it's Arches. Arches is a very like quality kind of paper. It's very much used like professionally, like with watercolor artists or watercolor painting artists. Painters. And what I'm also adding for the third tier is the gold embellishment. So something that I also love to add to the paintings is the gold leaf. I think it adds a very beautiful touch. It adds a different kind of texture, and I find it often really emphasizes that like sparkle in like the yoni. So if that's what you wish, then yes, it is a bit more expensive because it is it has its own process in terms of the application as well, but it's very beautiful. But I mean, of course, they're all very beautiful, and they all, you know, might speak to you differently, but those are the options that I have available.
So my loves, just to give you some details about this. So the first option, so that's the painting 4x4 inches, right? It's a square one. The price for the full thing, where you get both of us, and you of course get the painting. By the way, in case that wasn't clear, of course you're getting the painting. It's for you, the physical one. So it's $299 US. If you want the second option, the second tier, which is the 8x8, it's $369 US. And then this fancy paper with the golden leaf, which is my favorite, it's $399 US. So I want to speak a little bit about something, you know, because you mentioned this at the beginning, that women often reach out, but then it takes them some time to be able to commit. And I would say this is scary, I know, and this is an investment. Like on one hand, it's like, okay, I need to spend money, and goodness, I mean, I'm just thinking, in times when yoni is so shamed, right? Can you just imagine what must be going through our heads when you think, what? I'm gonna spend like $300 or $400 US on a yoni? Like, just imagine the outrage that so many people would feel. And the yoni with her energy would be like, darling, you should be spending that much on me every day, because she's the queen. But I would say this is what, like, this whole thing works on so many layers. Like, honestly, just notice how much time, energy, and money have you ever invested in your yoni? Have you ever offered to your yoni? Like, we have no problem buying like food or buying cleaning equipment for our house, but it's such a different place to spend on ourselves, especially as women. So much conditioning there to spend on others, not ourselves. And then on yoni, you know, it's not something I have to do. It's never going to be on my to-do list, my obligations and duty. And that's the whole point. You know, the moment you are going to make this transition in your body, that, you know what, that process is my priority. For me as a woman to be fully in my radiance, to have good life, and actually be the best mother and lover and friend and daughter and sister, that's what I need to do for myself. So yeah, that's number one on my to-do list. When you make that switch, something actually changes in your nervous system. Like, going from the place of like, oh yeah, it's nice to have, but it's not a must, going from there to no, it is a must. That's in itself a huge change. Okay, so I wanted to speak about that. And the second is because it is a sensitive experience. Like we spoke about it, we live in times where we are in no way encouraged to have a healthy relationship with our yoni, you know. And if you need more information, you can reach out to any one of us for more, you know. Just if you have any questions, just ask us, you know, if you need anything. Like, I don't think any one of us has an expectation of you just jumping on this deep water. Yoni needs time, you know. One of the things about the wrong approach to sex is throwing her on deep water. Yoni needs her time to open up, you know. You need to build trust with her. So whatever it is that you need in this process, let's give it to her. And then finally, let the yoni be the one who decides here. Not your head, but go into the yoni and ask her, would you like that? Hey, would you like to experience this process? Would you like to have your own portrait? And when you get the portrait, just ask the yoni again, where in the house do you want this to be, to be placed? You know, let your yoni guide this. Is there anything you'd like to add, Sabrina, to this?
No, I think you said it all, really. Yeah. I'm just very excited, and I'm also very honored to be here and offer this with you. And yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm just so touched, and I feel just very in awe of like all of it. But yeah, I'll try not to cry.
Oh, I love this. So you guys, you know, you can see the email. What's your email? Because if someone wants to you know, join this experience, please email Sabrina. Can you just, like, you guys will see the email in the description and on the slides. Can you just say what your email is?
Yes, so the email is iamartsvb as in Victor, B as in Bob, at gmail.com.
Okay, so we're gonna, like, you're gonna find it around this video wherever you're watching this. And if you're watching it through any of our channels, again, you guys, you know, you can, if it's on YouTube, on Instagram, wherever you are watching this, you can also contact us through these channels. And just one thing, because it is a very special offer, and you know, both of us are offering a lot of energy. We know that to organize these calls and these sessions, it also takes some time, logistical, and to be honest, like from the financial perspective, we are giving you something very special that normally is just not available for that price. So we're giving a lot of our heart and our time into this. So what feels good and respectful of our energy is to offer these special packages for 30 days. So for the next 30 days, you can book this. And again, if you're not really sure, just feel free to reach out to any one of us, ask some questions, but just to honor our input as well. Now, by the way, after 30 days, Sabrina is still offering those portraits. So you can still go ahead and experience the magic. It's just this unique package where both of us come together to share our gifts. This is what's available for the next 30 days. And my love, thank you so much for being here. I'm like, I just so love the whole idea, and having seen you, you know, like, because like you're saying about the drawings, I remember just seeing your drawings on Instagram and was like, wow, that's really amazing. Not knowing you're an artist at that time. And then, you know, when we started, when you shared with me about those Yoni portraits already some time ago, I just like, I love that whole idea so much. And one thing I really believe in is supporting each other. So it's like, I just love it. And I want to share this with everyone. And I honestly feel like the world would be a better place if there was a Yoni portrait in every single household.
Yes, I agree.
One Yoni portrait at a time.
Yes, no, I agree. And thank you again. I also wanted to add that people can also visit my website, and I think that might be in the description.
Yes, you're gonna find the links to Instagram and website and everything. Yes.
That also gives you, what I love about it as well is that it has all the different or the previous portraits that I've made, and they're all very different, of course, but what's more important is that attached to each image is a quote or a poem that has actually been written by the women themselves who participated. There's also their testimony. So if you want to get a better feel of what you know, to expect or what other women are saying, you can also go there. And then the last thing I was just going to comment on is that one thing I really appreciate about our connection is it's just so interesting how things kind of came full circle. So like, as you were saying at the beginning, we met each other at the Yoni monologues, where I was just like, you know, the random person taking the photo, and then look where we are now. You know, like I would never have imagined or perceived that from the get-go, right? So I think it's
that's so true.
Yeah. So I think it's quite amazing, and for me it's just like, wow, so like we're here, we're offering something, and it really feels aligned, and I'm grateful.
Thank you so much, my love. And thank you to everyone who, invested this time. I would say you just invested, it's probably over an hour to your yoni. And that's just beautiful and it's so valuable. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll see you soon with some more juicy videos. Bye.